Welcome, everyone, to Salon number 68, part one of Archaeomythology and Citizen Science, a multicultural dialogue of inherited knowledge honoring cultural roots. This is really a report from an event that took place in Costa Rica at the beginning of January, and we're very pleased to hear about this event that took place.
Beginning of June.
Oh, yes, beginning of June. Sorry. I'm Letecia, Layson, your moderator. I'm going to give short introductions and then turn the mic over to Maria Suarez. Joining her today is Joan Marler, Vicki Noble, Sorrel, Mocchia de Coggiola. And then after the presentations, we'll take questions and we're just very excited to see the room filling up. Maria Suarez Toro is a feminist journalist, an activist in defense of human rights, and an educator. She was the co-director of the Feminist International Radio Endeavor, FIRE, from 1991 to 2011. Since 2015, she's the co-director of the Community Center Diving Ambassadors of South Caribbean Sea, which is dedicated to the archaeological diving and recovery of the history of Afro-descendant population on the coast of Costa Rica, where she resides. Joan Marler is the executive director of the Institute of Archaeomythology, an international organization promoting archaeomythological scholarship. She is the author of Introducing Mythological Present and the editor of The Civilization of the Goddess by Maria Gimbutas. She's written many articles and published 40 articles with Maria Gimbutas' work, including a biographical article about Maria Gimbutas in Harvard's Notable American Women, a biographical dictionary. Vicki Noble is a feminist artist, writer, healer, and wisdom teacher, author of 8 books, including Shakti Woman, Feeling Our Fire, Healing Our World, and The Double Goddess. She's the co-creator of the Round Tarot deck, Feminist Toro, Mother Peace deck, revising both divination and world history to include women. She's retired from the Women's Spirituality Master's Program at CIIS, California Institute of Integral Studies, and New College of California in San Francisco. She adapts Tibetan Buddhist Dakini practices for her women's students holding private intensives in Santa Cruz, as well as Mother Peace certification programs. Sorrel Mocchia de Coggiola is born in Northern California in the USA. She studied theater arts and costume before moving into illustration and fine arts in San Francisco Academy of Arts, and later studied oil painting and old master techniques at Wells College program in Paris. Currently, she co-directs and styles the Paris branch of Dr. Sketchy's Anti-Art School, a successful monthly art event in Paris museums and nightclubs. She also works as a stylist for her photo shoots and music videos. Her work appears in several alternative galleries in Paris. She has illustrated several books, and her oil paintings have been featured in the Dealer Deluxe magazine in France. Her work as a copyist of old master paintings has appeared on the cover of Smithsonian Magazine, as well as Vogue magazine, Paris Match, and the book Les Copies de Louvre by Eric Sander. Welcome, each of you. And I'm going to turn the mic over now to Maria. Welcome, Maria, Joan, Vicki, and when Sorrel comes, we will welcome her as well.
So welcome to all of you. It's really a pleasure for me, right, sitting here in Costa Rica in one of the old traditional Afro houses where we held some of the activities of the seminar and the conference and the artistic residency that convened Sorrel, Vicki, and Joan to be here with 45 other women and a couple of men from the highlands of Talamanca, the lowlands of the Caribbean coast, where the biggest community of indigenous peoples in Costa Rica and the biggest concentration of Afro population in Costa Rica, and the highest level of protection of the environment comprised of 5 protected areas in Costa Rica are concentrated, and that is the constituency of what was the seminar that we're going to be talking about to you. It's with much pride that I am overlooking the ocean and the mountain now that I'm going to be talking to you about, and that Vicki, Joan, and Sorrel will also be talking about, which is the context of this amazing meeting that just took place from the 3rd to the 6th of June here in Costa Rica. So welcome. And I would like to, now that Leti presented all of you, I would like to bring you, first of all, explain that the machine that you hear outside is the grass cutter, and I'm gonna ask them to turn it off when I have to speak. And I hope that you can hear me. I would like to bring you into the context of this seminar in a brief presentation, because what we are going to do today is Joan is going to talk about the seminar. I am going to expand on this context. Then Vicki will present to you her experience, and so will Toro. And then I will do the forward-looking strategies that came out of the event. And then we will have the question and answers. So I would just like to begin by saying to you that the seminar and the conference that we just organized convened for a conference where Vicki presented the feminist tarot, and Joan did a conference about Maria Gimbuta's legacy. Was a one-day conference on the 1st of June where we convened the feminist movement of Costa Rica to come to that one-day activity. I will not talk about it because that is what they would talk about. And also from the 3rd to the 5th to the 6th of June, we organized the seminar about the ancestral heritage. Besides that, we took Joan and Vicki and Sorrel to the Jade Museum in San Jose, where there is a very large presentation of what they call the figurines of virgins, which we know are the goddesses of ancient Costa Rica. So that will be the tour that we will take you through with the experience that we have lived in this seminar. And I would like then to turn it over to Joan to be able to talk about the seminar and the conference. And welcome Joan Marler. You know Joan, and already Leti presented you, and I present Joan as the disciple or the protege of Maria Gimbutas, and in her own right. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you very much, Maria. I just wanted to say I just was in touch with Sorrel, and she had her time mixed up, but she will be she will be connecting to us as soon as she can manage. So um, so archaeomythology and citizen science, the multicultural dialogue of inherited knowledge, honoring our cultural roots. Over the past year, I've had the pleasure of collaborating with Maria Suarez, Toro on various aspects of the development of this multicultural, multidimensional event that took place in Costa Rica. The seminar, Archaeomythology and Citizen Science, a multicultural dialogue of inherited knowledge, honoring our cultural roots. And I repeat that because it's worthy of repetition, because it's so rich in terms of what it means and what it's meant to us, and what it has meant to everyone who took part in that event over those days. The seminar itself took place June 3rd to 6th of this year in the Caribbean region of Coita, Costa Rica. And in the spirit of the guest economy, Maria generously invited me, along with writer, creator of the Mother Peace Toro, Vicki Noble, artist Sorrel Mocchia de Coggiola, and poet novelist Mary Mackey, to be in residence at Casa Marina in her beautiful place near the Caribbean in Coita. Unfortunately, Mary was unable to join us, but we carried on and contacted her from time to time to let her know what was happening. After arriving in San Jose, we enjoyed our first experience of the richness of pre-Columbian culture in Costa Rica by visiting the permanent exhibition of exquisite female sculptures preserved in the Jade Museum in San Jose, guided by the singer, songwriter, prehistorian Guadalupe Urbina, who drove hours to share her knowledge with us from her province in Guanacaste. It was such a pleasure, such a privilege to be with Guadalupe and to receive the wisdom and the knowledge that she has of these exquisite figurines that we saw, hundreds and hundreds of them, that spoke of a profound connection that the pre-Columbian people had with the living world, with each other, with a very refined sense of spirituality that they expressed in these sculptures. And by the way, the idea that they were virgins, of course, is a Christian overlay to somehow find a way to encapsulate them so that their nakedness and their beauty can somehow be rendered okay. That's my interpretation anyway. But they are so powerful. They are engraved with designs that are symbols of meaning, profound meaning. And this is one of the things that Guadalupe was able to share with us from her decades of study of these images, showing us, for instance, how the parallel lines that go down in some of the sculptures is rain, she said, and the connection between the goddess and rain as an aspect, a really important aspect of regeneration and of the life force is found in a number of them. And also the honoring of women as the producers of life, the source of life, and the stunning power that they express in these sculptures. And so anyone who goes to Costa Rica, I highly recommend you spend some hours at the Jade Museum and just take it in. It's just phenomenal. So after the experience of the Jade Museum, which was a great introduction to being there, we drove the hours necessary to get to Coita and to go into this amazing jungle area where Maria has her house that she lends out to artists and to musicians and to people who are engaged in culture in a way to support them and to ensure that there's some place that they can stay and be nurtured, to show that yes, culture is important, many times people who are involved in culture aren't the ones who can pay big sums of money to stay. So she's providing that place. So it was a very wonderful thing to be in that atmosphere and to hear the howler monkeys and to see the beautiful birds and being surrounded by the forest that is protected there. So the first event was one that that was already mentioned by Maria, which took place on June 1st, and this is before the seminar. The formal seminar began, and this was something that she invited feminists, women who had been involved in feminism for decades, who had already been introduced on some level to the work of Maria Gimbutas, introduced by the beloved writer and researcher Ana Aroba, who had introduced many women over the years to the work of Maria Gimbutas. And so the first thing we did was to build an altar to Ana Aroba, who's no longer with us, and also to, as a kind of a tacit place of recognizing Maria Gimbutas, who was there with Ana Aroba. And so that was right at the center of where we were presenting. So there were a limit of 50 women who could come, and there had to be a limit, not only because of the size of the space, but also because the lunch was paid for and actually presented to us as a gift from the University of Costa Rica, and also the advertisement for it. And there was so all the way through from the 1st of June all the way through to the conclusion of our seminars, the resources that had to be spent for making this go were very, very often given by individuals and institutions who recognized the importance of what we were doing. And that's something that is certainly an expression of of spontaneous gift economy that it's like everyone, there were so many organizations and people holding hands to support what was unfolding throughout these 2 weeks. So I give a presentation on the first. The morning was focused on celebrating Maria Gimbutas. I presented a PowerPoint presentation about her life and work that led to her creation of Archaeomythology, which was mentioned many times during the whole event, all the way through the time we were in Costa Rica, because of the significance for the connection with people's ancient lineage. And we'll come to that a little bit later. So in the afternoon, after lunch, Vicki Noble gave a dynamic PowerPoint presentation introducing the human cultural development from Africa into the wider world and the spirituality involved in that. And she will, I'm sure, say a few things about it in her presentation. She also introduced the Mother Peace cards and welcomed everyone. Here are these hardcore feminists who you would think that perhaps many of them who were very politically motivated and so on would be kind of maybe, what is this Mother Peace Toro cards? But they received them and they followed the suggestion from Vicki to find someone to show the cards to, a friend or someone in the audience, and to discuss the possible meanings of the symbols. And everyone got into it. It was amazing. And there was a sense of the entire atmosphere becoming deeply stilled and filled with the joy of recognition and discovery. And so that was turned into an impromptu ritual as women came to get the cards and also to put them back. and to connect with each other on a deeper level. So that was our introduction to the week. And by June 3rd to 6th was the seminar, and that was a profusion of richness, interdisciplinary, multicultural richness of everyone who participated. So before the seminar began on the first day, members of the Bribri, Cabakar, Nobe, and Afro-descendants of the Kawita community in Costa Rica worked together to create a large sacred altar in front of the area for presentations that represented the entire living world, containing the mountains, the rivers, the seas, providing a rich abundance of all that is necessary to sustain life, health, and well-being for the traditional peoples living within this ancient interconnected ecosystem. And during the course of Maria's PowerPoint that she'll be showing you, there will be a beautiful image of this altar, and I hope that Maria will point it out to you because it's really something quite spectacular. And the it was the area of the altar was also filled with fruits and you know, like not just the idea of the rich abundance of the land, but also it actually representations in real form of what could be eaten and what was eaten and is eaten to sustain people still to this day. So members of these traditional cultures provided an invocation to begin the symposium and were the first panelists to speak as the expression of the honor and appreciation shown to them for continuing to embody their traditional knowledge. This multicultural event was organized to encourage the exchange of knowledge about people's traditional lifeways in Talamanca and to other national and international cultural regions relevant to the interdisciplinary approach of archaeomythology. In one panel, I spoke about how Maria Gimbutas created archaeomythology to expand the interpretive boundaries of archaeology, to incorporate the study of beliefs, rituals, symbolic imagery, and cultural items created in antiquity as expressions of social and mythological functions reflecting people's ancestral systems of meaning. The seminar consisted not only of panels, dialogues, and presentations of various kinds, including excursions to witness traditional food production, but also to experience the communal ancestral coca ritual and the telling of mythical stories at the ocean's edge. Citizen science, in the context of lived experience, is defined as a way of producing new knowledge through collective, participatory, community research, according to the ambassadors of the sea, who are still investigating the sunken slave ships when the participants are from communities. And it is said that when participants are from communities who have preserved their ancient stories, they integrate the ancestral knowledge inherited from their predecessors in the territory. And I want to add something here of my own experience, which is that when Maria Suarez first told me that what they're doing is underwater archaeomythology, I was surprised because I had no idea that it was being applied anywhere, particularly in activities nowadays. I mean, in terms of what is meaningful to researchers and their personal histories. So I was naturally I wanted to come. Naturally I had to come because archaeomythology was being featured. And during the course of the time being here, even after the years, you know, the year of collaborating, I still had a sense of what was being fed to me, what was being transmitted to me, and to understand Maria's work in a new way, in a deep way. That I'm sure that if she was here in the flesh with us, she would be very excited because what she was doing in archaeomythology was basically finding an interdisciplinary way to study the beliefs, rituals, and mythological aspects of culture in prehistory, because there was no way then to see written records of that time, and to find a way to somehow find it there, and to recognize that it did happen. But here you have people who are generationally receiving information from their ancestors, from their grandmothers. In fact, Maria Sanchez, Maria, who was working with the students, learning to dive and learning to do these investigations, she said, go and talk to your grandmother. Go and talk to your grandfather. Go and find out what it is that you've inherited, that would tell you what you're finding under the sea. And they did that, and they found, to their amazement, that so much richness of transmission of knowledge is there. And so they're looking back into not the thousands of years back, but also to a time that is still living in people's memory, in terms of what it is that they can understand about their own culture from what is in the sea, and that the sea is alive, and that the sea is a very important part of their lived experience, that is also informing their archaeomythology. So, and their understanding of what is happening with their discoveries of a scientific nature as well. So I'm not sure how much time I still have. Can someone give me a sense about that?
Maria,
Is that
5.
5 minutes? Yeah? Okay. So this whole event was so much more complex and rich than it's ever possible for me to even give a glimpse of in this very short period of time. But we're going to, of course, have other seminars that will also bring more of the layers of what happened. But so many people from different cultures and from different experiences and from different places in the world came, who were attracted to what was remarkable about this whole event. And we were all very touched and amazed by what was brought to us by the indigenous people, who came down from the mountains to share their knowledge with us. And that was something that really touched our hearts, and I think that it'll live with us forever. And of course, we're going to come back and visit them again. And so you'll hear more about all of this as time goes on, but I've only scratched the surface of what we did and what we experienced. And Maria Suarez is going to, of course, give us more information as well. So that's what I can tell you now, and there's so much more to say. But I want to thank the maternal gift economy and everyone involved in not only this seminar, this salon, but everyone who participated to create this really historical event that took place in Costa Rica. Thank you.
So if you can play, Diane, the video for Joan, because before every presentation, but Joan asked me to do it afterwards, and she was right, because it was important to listen to her first. But now if you can present the video that we produced here about Joan in the seminar and the activities.
My first time to be in Cahuita. I'm staying with Maria Suarez and working together on this beautiful event. And it's really a joy to be here, and a joy to know that the the indigenous peoples of the Bribri are coming, and I see that you're here, and that's just really so special, and it's a great honor to be with you here. Archaeomythology is my subject, and I understand from Maria Suarez that archaeomythology is something very important to their work with citizen science. And that inspires me very much, because the history of people, but the history of the ancestors and the great distant ancestors are present now with archaeomythology.
How you feel here?
This is my first time in Cahuita, although I was in Costa Rica once, a long time ago, as a tourist only.
Okay.
And I feel very inspired by what everyone is doing, and the sense of family, the sense of community, and the sense of respecting the land.
And I would just like to point out in my brief presentation now that there are two principal ways of looking at mythology. Where Genevieve was finding in old Europe, she found beauty. She found focus on the celebration of life and the prevalence of female imagery. So we have the initial, the oldest and the closest to the earth mythology that comes from people's direct experience with being born of woman and being connected to the living earth, and those who are separated from that and trained not to venerate women at the center of culture, but to venerate the male. Now, there are many examples of indigenous peoples of the world, and of course, many of you here are representative of that, who recognize that the center of life is Mother Earth and Mother Water, and all that comes from that as the generative center. You know, in these societies that are generative, in these societies that are able to be sustained over long periods and who venerate the earth, the males are important and also respected. So archaeomythology, as Maria coined it, and as we are using it here, is aware that there are many kinds of mythology, but the mythology that connects to the living earth, that is generative to human society, are not ones that separate us from that, but connect us to the living earth and to each other, and to the great waters of the earth. Happy birthday, Joan. Happy birthday to you.
Costa Rica dice, gracias, Joan. Gracias por estar acá. Thank you, thank you, thank you much. We appreciate your words and your presence. here for us.
Yo creo que aquí todo lo que se haga, negociaciones, proyectos, tiene que ser primero conocido por el pueblo.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Joan. Oh, such memories about that event. I think we're gonna continue with Vicki and then Sorrel, and then I'll talk at the end because they're doing the good part. Maybe Diane, if you can put Vicki's video now because hers is before her presentation and then Vicki can continue. Thank you.
Ritual action. Y así que al mismo tiempo que ustedes van haciendo esta acción en esta procesión ritual, ask the mother piece to show you your next purpose. Pídele a la Madre Paz que te diga qué es lo siguiente.
So as a way of understanding our human evolution in a broader way, we can imagine that communities were organized socially around the bipolar female cycle.
Entonces también entendemos que las comunidades se podrían haber organizado alrededor de este ciclo bipolar.
And so the experience would have been collective, a collective experience for the whole community, men, women, and children.
Entonces la experiencia debería de haber sido colectiva de toda la comunidad cuando estaban teniendo niños.
It's one more way of understanding why the original cultures coming from Africa were matriarchal. And that when we came out of Africa, everybody came out of Africa with that mentality all over the world.
Por eso podemos decir que cuando salieron de África, todos salimos de África.
And that monthly lunar menstrual cycle would be our primary structure in terms of our social organization.
ciclo menstrual lunar es nuestra organización primaria.
Thank you. I want to present to you Vicki Noble. We already introduced her. I don't think she needs a lot of introduction, but I'm very glad to see you again, Vicki, and thank you. Adelante. Unmute.
Thank you. Wow, so much already. Joan, you were so eloquent. What an eloquent overview of what happened for us and what we experienced. I'm floored in such a short time. Maria, what was with my video?
I don't know.
I
don't know what happened.
Very artistic and not in the real, which is kind of like my thing, you know. So like, how amazing.
Somebody's saying, can you open just a second? Diane, am I being heard?
Yes,
And somebody said in the chat that it's a lovely video with all the colors. I was having a fit, but then I relaxed because I said, oh yes, this place is really colors. So thank God you're going to talk after it.
Well, I think it's funny in some way. There's something about it that's characteristic. You know, I have all my planets in the 12th house, which is, they say, kind of in the background and the other world. So that was me in the other world at the conference. The whole idea of the gift and the way that you expressed it, Joan, about Maria's work and the whole conference and how it came together, I was very moved by that as well. And especially I felt Maria's work with the young people, which you all haven't really even heard about so much today, but you will in future salons. She responded to the needs of these young kids still in their teens who then learned with her to dive. Maria's a diver, and the young people learned diving from her, all of which I saw as we saw the young people now grown up in their early 20s. I saw that there was some way, Maria, and you say more about this, that you saw the need. We say that that's central to the maternal gift economy precepts. You know, you see a need, you give to need. A mother gives to a newborn child. Well, I mean, a mother gives to the unborn child her body, first of all, and then she gives to the newborn child 24/7 survival attention and attentiveness. And if she didn't, we wouldn't survive. And so it's like that. Maria saw the need in the community. These kids didn't have much waiting for them in the future. And she brought them together, mentored them, and brought them to the point where we saw them fully expressed. And what a gift. And Maria kept moving into the background and letting them come forward and really express their experience and their connection to the water and to the sunken slave ships and so on. It was profound. It was such a spontaneous or organic expression of the gift economy. I wanted to mostly talk about, you can see even from the video that, I've been obsessed my whole adult life with the menstrual cycle. In my very early 20s, I was in a women's health collective, and we did something called menstrual extraction, which I later felt was kind of a false consciousness about menstruation coming from Western culture, that it's kind of unfortunate, and the sooner we can get it out, the better. Then, of course, when I moved to Berkeley and Karen and I started our research together for the Mother Peace cards, we became really interested in investigating our own menstrual periods and the synchronicity that, of course, happens, the synchronization that happens with even just two women living together. But in the ancient times, I really understand that we would have all been synchronized together. And over the years, I, besides sacralizing the menstrual cycle, which we did on purpose, and not only did Karen and I do that, but we found out later that many different women who became leaders in the women's spirituality and the goddess movement also had really prioritized their menstrual cycles and had investigated that, the significance of that in some way. So it became kind of a core feature. And I think that makes sense. We were remembering in the women's spirituality movement in the 70s in the United States, we were remembering from nothing, we're orphans in the US. We don't even live in the land where our ancestors lived. And so we were remembering all the way back. And the menstrual cycle was part of what helped us to do that, helped us to understand through our bodies and through our body's connection to the cycles of the moon and the cycles of the planets. Then we were learning about matriarchy, and we were learning it from a lot of those male scholars who were outside of and not really approved by the academic establishment that we know today. So from Robert Graves back further to Jacob Backhoven, Mutterrecht, Mother Right, the Briefold, the Mothers, a huge 3-volume set. We were steeped in those kinds of resources and just stimulated by all of the artwork from ancient cultures and learning about moon lodges, women who celebrated the menstrual cycle, taught younger women about the menstrual cycle and its meaning, and the initiation rites for girls all over the world, except not us. you know, we didn't have initiation rites. And so a lot of us started to make initiation rites for our daughters, who were not always thrilled with the idea, but who, you know, who let us do that. Anyway, that took me through so many years of my life and my early career. I worked a lot with female shamanism as a group process, as a collective process, that all women were doing shamanic work in the kinds of cultures that I'm talking about, where there weren't electric lights, we were still bleeding and ovulating together. And I think that the community rituals evolved out of that. And I think, in fact, that everything evolved out of that, and that we were matriarchal and matrilineal and female-centered and all that for you know, 200,000 years, until patriarchy intruded into that. And the first place we see that and see it so clearly is in old Europe, and thousands of years ago. And that's what Gimbutas showed us. And that's what was so exciting about her work. And I think that's part of why the women's spirituality movement and the goddess movement really coalesced around Maria's work. And we honored her as someone who put the goddess on the map and who gave us the depth of her knowledge and experience, so that we weren't just coming off of our intuition, and we weren't locked into some old paradigm about first there was matriarchy and then we evolved, you know, to patriarchy, because certainly that's not what happened. And so she became not only, you know, a really important scholar and mentor for us, but she became like a spiritual teacher, practically. She would never say that, but that's what happened. And that's how her work really transmitted to many of us in the 70s, and how we took it into our lives then in the 1980s and the 1990s. One of the things I learned is that Indigenous people, and this is when Karen and I were first researching, Indigenous people all over the world keep the moons, of course, the new moon and the full moon, the moon cycle, but also they keep the seasonal holidays. And we call them seasonal holidays because we're, you know, I'm in the north, and we have 4 seasons, more or less. I'm in California, not so much, but we recognize the seasonal cycles. Even in places where there aren't seasons to speak of, the Indigenous people still recognize these power points in the course of the solar year. And they honor the same ones that we discovered and appropriated, I guess you could say, from our Celtic background. And finally, I figured out, I was given Tibetan mandala practices, Dakini mandala practices. And in the 90s, I learned those practices, and I realized how important it was to put ourselves, us women, in the center of our own mandala, you know, not on the edges or the periphery of somebody else's, not the husband, not the children, but really centering ourselves in a deep feminine source of wisdom, earth wisdom. And so that was very helpful for me as a methodology for grounding all of these understandings that were happening on spiritual levels. And then at some point in my mandala practice, I learned that the word mandala means bhaga in Sanskrit. And bhaga is yoni, vulva, female genitalia. So the whole mandala tradition is honoring the female biological reality on this planet. So, you know, I wrote a chapter called Her Body is My Body in Shakti Woman. I worked a lot in my book, The Double Goddess, to make the connections between the Tibetan culture and the Tibetan practices and the old European shamanistic tradition of women that came together in the Mediterranean area. And so that's, you know, vulvas are ubiquitous. There are more vulvas in the world through all of time than any other image that humans have produced. From the beginning of our imagery all the way up to today in indigenous places. So I had this epiphany that, oh, well, we know we all come out of Africa. And we've been, they've told us, you know, this is all supposed to be new information now, because it used to be thought that in Europe, humanity emerged, but that's not true. In Africa, humanity emerged. And from Africa, humanity came out of Africa and went everywhere on the planet. And we all have an ancient shared, not only a memory, but a tradition, like an oral tradition, you might say, or a racial tradition that has come with all of us out of our African roots and into all of these other places. And that's why indigenous people all over the world have a mandala shape, a symbolic shape of the four directions, the four cardinal points, and the cross quarter points in between. It's an 8-point calendar. It's everywhere. And so that's been just a huge epiphany for me in the last couple of decades. And so I've been for 40 years very connected in some mythological, abstract, very felt way with indigenous women everywhere. And being at this has happened a few times before for me, but at this conference, it was profound. Having indigenous women from 3 different cultures in Costa Rica, plus the Afro women down on the coast who are almost certainly descended from some of these slave ships that the kids are excavating. It was so profound to be with them, to hear them speak, and to be received by them. Because when I talked about menstruation, they related, and they came and talked to me later, you know, and that was wonderful. But even from the very beginning, when they first started talking about their cultures and what they were doing there, I was so moved. I was moved to tears the first day. You know, it was just the integration, the level of coming together that I felt and often feel these days as we are able to have these exchanges, we Western women with indigenous women who still have those practices, who still have, what was that? No, who still have those traditions. And those traditions are so alive for them in a way that they're not for us. We're retrieving them from a very ancient past. And, you know, we were once indigenous as well. And so we have to go way back to find and honor and connect with our indigenous roots. But they're the same everywhere because, as I say, we all came out of Africa. We have the same racial memory. We're all one people, and that was very profound. I also felt there was some, not conflict, but some different, you know, the different tribal people or the different indigenous people in Costa Rica, we learned have been efforting to get their communities recognized by the government, to get their land recognized and so on. And that's been happening. They've been able to do that. Costa Rica, as you know, I hope, is so interesting because they don't even have a military. I mean, it's a really different consciousness than what we're used to in Western culture. And also they're still living, the indigenous women they're still living those pictures we saw in the museum. They are those people. You know, it was just, it was so integrative. I wish that more and more and more of that kind of integration between Western feminism and indigenous wisdom and knowledge could come together, because it's what we need. As I said to some of the women there, you know, we activists, many of us are activists and have been. I've been an activist my whole life, and the things that we're fighting for, and the things that we believe in, and the things that we're so afraid of losing in this corporate capitalist mess we're in, they, you know, they don't have that. I mean, they had cell phones. They're not primitive. They're in the world, but they're still grounded in their bodies to the earth. And my work with women, my whole life, all the shamanism work has been to get us grounded in our bodies. You know, I did yoga for 35 years. You have to get grounded in your body, or you can't recognize intuitively or through the senses how we belong to nature, and that the separation we've made from nature is so dangerous for us and so consequential. You know, it has led to the crisis we're in on the planet. And so my feeling has always been that women have got to come more into leadership and more into the center of our reality. We have got to be part of the governance in a way that we still are not. And that if that doesn't happen, you know, I really think our species is going to be extinct, just like all the other species we've made extinct. So for me, it's been extremely important conceptually. But, you know, it's indigenous women all over the world in the last 100 years who not only have that conceptual understanding, but they are so connected in their bodies still to the reality that they stand up to corporations in a way that we don't. They stand up. They you know, the water, they tried to privatize the water in Bolivia, and the indigenous women said, no, you can't. And it was just like, no, her body is my body. You can't do that. And the Nigerian women, you know, who stood up to Shell Oil, the Canadian indigenous women who stood up to the oil companies, the women at Standing Rock. I mean, it happens all the time, and it has to do with that intense connection that they haven't lost. So I don't know, I'm probably running out of time. I felt and I feel that what we need to do at this point is support them, because they are fighting the good fight, and they are very compromised in that fight, because they don't have all the affluence and they don't have all the media coverage that we get and so on. But we don't have what they have, which is this kind of inherent, unbroken, natural courage that arises in the face of danger to Mother Earth, which they understand is danger to everything, everyone, all life. And so I felt it so strongly, like, here they are. Let's support them. Let's do what we can to support their fights and their battles to stay indigenous, and to protect their indigenous areas, to protect Mother Earth, because we can learn from what do they call it, biomimicry. You know, we can learn in our bodies from them how to do that. I first learned that when I first went out of the country and visited Mexico. I don't know, what was I, in my 30s. And when I saw the Zapotec women in Oaxaca and how they were, you know, they're very poor. A lot of them were sitting and begging, and and sitting at the market every week. And, you know, they didn't have anything that we have in the States, but what they have was so profound for me. I felt like, I want that. I want that. What is that? And I think what it is a kind of sovereignty. They still own themselves. You know, they haven't lost ownership of their person, and they haven't lost that empowerment that comes from not having been violated or separated. We've been so separated in the US from even the European continent that many of us come from, you know, in some way. We've even been separated from the ground and certainly from nature. So that was my overall feeling was, oh, this is the gift economy happening in real life. This is matriarchal studies writ large. You know, this is it. It's actually coming together here. And I so appreciate that. And I was so moved by it emotionally and just so happy to be part of it in that way and to really feel the confirmation of my work and other work of women in the goddess movement. And I think the indigenous women, this has happened in the matriarchal studies movement as well. I think the indigenous women, when they understand us and what our conceptual, you know, reality is, that they also feel confirmed because they're considered, you know, backward and like they're standing in the way of progress. And so they're not getting any good feedback from the public realm. So I think it's a very good marriage of Western feminism and indigenous female wisdom. And those cultures are all still matrilineal. They talked about it in their presentations. It was really confirming. And so, you know, blessed be, and thank you so much, Maria and Joan, for persuading me to come and to be part of it.
Thank you so much, Vicki. That was really powerful. And I just want to highlight from Joan and Vicki before I turn over to Sorrel, that one of the things that what was important for all of us in Costa Rica and for the women in the seminar was to understand, as I explained since the very beginning when we were preparing your visit, that I always explain to the Afro and the Bribri, the Quebecer, and all of the women in the community that the delegation that was coming from the United States was a delegation of women who have done their homework, not only come to the Caribbean for sun and beach, not only coming to the Caribbean for tourism, or even coming to the Caribbean, as many have done for the last 40 years of visit here to study us, but they were coming for a dialogue and sharing, having done their own homework about their ancestry and coming to learn from us about ours. And I wanted to highlight that connection because it really happened. And we all felt that we were with women who were also working on our homework together. So thank you. Then we had Sorrel, who was coming and who I didn't know. I knew Vicki, I knew Joan, I didn't know Sorrel. We had Sorrel coming, who I didn't know, but also who came as an artist of the Archaeomythology delegation. And ever since we started planning the visit, I thought, well, what are we going to do with this artist from plastic art to paint? What are we going to do in this conference that she can make a contribution and that she can also learn from it the same way that we were going to do about what we brought to it? And she did it herself. She paved her way and she found it in a way that was so amazing that I would dare to believe that she was one of the women in the conference that made a everlasting impression that cannot be even erased by language. And you will know how and why when she talks to us. But I would also like to play her video, and I hope it doesn't come only with colors. I hope it comes with the full-fledged work and interactivity that she had as an artist in the seminar. Go ahead, Diane, and play her video.
Sorrel, and I'm here as an artist to try and leave a visual trace of this conference. So I hope to be able to draw portraits of some of you.
Mi nombre es Sorrel, yo soy una artista y voy a estar a cargo de dejar pinturas y memorias artísticas de este evento. Espero poder dibujar a algunos de ustedes.
I was thinking about, like I said to the ladies earlier, that creating a portrait of somebody is representing a moment in their lives.
Yo le estaba diciendo en la comisión donde me tocó trabajar que hacerle un retrato o un dibujo más bien a una persona es capturar el momento de un momento en su vida.
And I was thinking about the slaves that were on those ships. And my first thought was that it's such a shame that their faces are lost to us.
Y he estado mucho pensando en estos días de las personas esclavizadas que venían en esos barcos y que no están y que sus caras desaparecieron para nosotros.
Because every one of them had a face and a name and a family and a history.
Uno tenía una cara, una familia y una historia.
But I'm glad to realize that actually those faces go on living in the various communities that are here, and some of those faces are actually here today.
Pero estoy muy feliz de darme cuenta que sus caras siguen viviendo en las caras que están vivas en estas comunidades trabajando.
So I was happy to be able to represent some, if not all, of the beautiful people that are here today and who are here remembering those people who are lost.
Thank you, and I leave you with Sorrel, the artist. Sorrel?
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I arrived a little bit late. I'm not very good at calculating time zones. I'm talking to you from France. So, as you could see, I wanted to participate in this conference in a visual manner, which is not an easy challenge, but I wanted to set that challenge for myself because, like I said in the video, this was a particularly historic moment of having all these various tribes come together who had, in many cases, a common ancestry, and they were there to talk about their common ancestry. And what was fascinating to me was that traces of that ancestry can be found in the faces of the people that were there. And I have been fascinated by portraiture for almost my entire life. Portraiture is something that for many people can kind of play an ambiguous role. Many people associate having your portrait painted with privilege or a sort of a homage to wealth and power. But the tradition of the popular portrait is a very ancient tradition. And I've been thinking about the ancient Greeks and Egyptians who would have their portrait painted and keep it in their house for their whole lives. And when they died, their portrait would be attached to their mummy or attached to their sarcophagus and buried with them. It's for me, it's a really fascinating tradition. And when you are painting somebody's portrait or drawing them, you're kind of trying to capture a significant moment in this person's life, kind of a period in their lives, and also, if possible, a sort of a sense of the spirit of that person as they were expressing it in that particular period of their life. So it was an important homage for me to be able to capture some of the images and some of the faces of the people that were attending this conference. And of course, if it's just about capturing somebody's image, that can be done with a photograph. But a photograph only represents a single second in somebody's life. Whereas the portrait is a process that takes time and it takes patience. And I see it as an artisanal work rather than just as an artistic work. It's the work of an artisan. And I've been thinking lately about the writer and lecturer and artist, William Morris, who at the end of the 19th century was giving lectures against the advancement of industrialization. It was a particularly significant moment in which people's everyday objects were starting to be mass produced for the first time. And he thought it was important to bring to people's attention what was being lost when things are mass produced. And what he was talking about was that the joy of the maker, so the joy of the artisan, is lost when you have a mass production. And even if it's something very simple, even if it's just a wooden spoon that somebody made, that can be an object that is unique and that can be decorated, and there can only be one in the world that is like it. And when that spoon is used, the joy which the artisan felt when he made the object or she made the object can be transmitted to the user every single time that they use this. And I think that everybody has had that experience on a sort of a visceral level, where if you have something that's handmade or that was made for you, for example, it could be a piece of clothing, it could be a drawing, it could be a piece of embroidery, whatever it is, you have a very particular pleasure when you come into contact with it that you don't have with something that you just bought at a store, for example. And this this similar kind of transmission goes on, as far as I'm concerned, with portraiture. The portrait represents time that the person in question has spent with the artist. And during that time, there's a sort of a mysterious rapport that gets created. Like, as the subject, you're offering your image to the artist, and the artist is creating a variation on that image and offering it back to you. And this is what I call a sort of an endless loop of joy that is created between the two of you. Hopefully, the joy and the satisfaction of the artist goes back to the person every time that they run into their portrait, even if, if it's hanging in their house or whatever. But that transmission of joy, for me, is something that's extremely important. But it's easy to say, okay, this is all very lovely, but what role can this possibly play in an age in which so many peoples are struggling even to survive, in which we're struggling to preserve some form of human life on the planet at all? And what significance can portraiture have in an age in which the political message seems to weigh heavier than a personal rapport? And I think that the return to personal human rapport is extremely important. I think that art can really be significant to political movements when it is telling a human story, when it is telling a very personal story, much more so than when it's just trying to illustrate a slogan or illustrate a political concept, for example. That's really the role of propaganda rather than art. The illustration of political ideas has its own grand tradition, and it is a form of communication, and it can be very important. But that's not what I'm talking about at the moment. The art that interests me personally is an art that is very personal and is very ambiguous, and perhaps is a bit too human and too complicated to be able to be reduced to a simple political motive, no matter how worthy that may be. So to go back to the concept of survival, I think that the point that I want to make with all of this is that okay, so our human survival is desperately important. Everybody knows that. But I would ask, what is it about human existence that we're really trying to preserve by trying to preserve our life on this planet? We're not just trying to preserve our capacity to eat and to drink and to breathe and reproduce as a species. Humans are much more than that. So what is it that gives meaning to our lives? What is it that makes us uniquely human? I would argue that one of the things that makes us really uniquely human is our sort of infinite capacity for creativity that expresses itself in so many different ways. As humans, we're constantly trying to interpret the world around us and see how it makes us feel. And from that perception and from that feeling, create improvisations and create all sorts of variations. And we're sharing these improvisations, and we're sharing these variations that we've come up with each other all the time. So for me, that was, to bring us back to the gift economy, that was what I wanted to contribute to this conference, was to try and absorb what I was being given and give back a variation on it artistically. It was an extremely moving experience. I have to say that the people that I met were absolutely astonishing, and every single one of them was extremely beautiful in their own way. There's the fantastic faces and the incredibly strong personalities and intelligence that went along with all of these people. It was a very beautiful experience for me. So what I think what I want to leave you with is that I think that this form of sharing with each other artistically is at the core of, really at the core of human existence. And I hope that it will stay that way, because I think that it's worth something that's worth saving. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sorrel. That was wonderful. It's the lasting experience that I was talking about, is that she not only painted the portraits, but she gave it to every person, and you would not imagine what it was like for the kids and also the adults to be able to embrace the treasure that she left them to take back home. We took pictures of them. You saw some of them. We're going to present them also in the memoir that we're going to do about the seminar, but it was a lasting experience in the way that she did it, and also how she interacted and what she left for everybody else. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I believe maybe, we can work this out in another way, because I believe that what happened with the way that Sorrel interacted in the conference is that she has brought archaeomythology to the artistic production. It's been done oftentimes, and it's because of the art that Maria Joaquin Butas was able to find in that art of the figurines that she was able to find, and that we were able to find in the old Europe, the traces left, and also in all of our cultures. But Sorrel brought it up to date with archaeomythology. And thank you so much. So we only have a half hour. I'm very happy that you all took all the time that you wanted. I want to do only 5 minutes of a commentary trying to link all of this to our context and to 3 of the moving forces of this seminar. So Diane, if you take me to the second slide that I had, and I promise you I will do it in 5 minutes so that we have some time for Q&A from you. And thank Genevieve and Diane and Letty and everybody engaged in this, because they have organized a second salon 2 weeks from now. Well, you were here directly from one of the Bribri women that was at the conference, one of the Afro women that was at the conference. Joan and I will come again. So we will be able to talk more about the local context, but I want to leave you with the 3 main ideas of how it is and why we in the Caribbean connected citizenship science to archaeomythology. And with that, I will leave it then to the Q&A. So it's my second slide. Oh, yes. Okay. Thanks. So what I would like you to understand is that when I heard Joan Marler in one of the gift economy meetings, Salon, I guess it was, talking about archaeomythology, I immediately jumped and practically interrupted her to say that what we were doing in the Caribbean was archaeomythology. And she explained how she looked at me cross-eyed. But anyway, I knew that it was. And so that's how the connection began. And the reason why I knew and connected with what she was explaining and has explained to you about archaeomythology is because we were in Costa Rica at the verge of proving that the two ships that we are researching with Afro and Bribri children of our community were slave ships. It brought out all of the connections that they had in their DNA and in their spirit and in their vibration, they used to call it. They used to say to me, but Maria, every time we go down and we see the anchors and we see the bricks and we see the cannons, we feel a vibration. What is it? And I said, go ask your grandmother and your grandfather. I have no clue about you. And we're still researching the clues about the ships. So when they began asking the same questions to their grandparents that they learned in archaeology to ask about objects that we were finding in the bottom of the ocean, where did they come from? What were those ships all about? What were the people that were coming in those places? And I had to create a literary character, matriarchal, ancestral, Tonaina, the sea light, to tell the story, because it was too much for me also as a journalist and as an academic that I used to be, and as a researcher and as an activist. Then all of a sudden, it all came together when I heard the word archaeomythology, but it did so not only for me. And I wanted Joan, when we decided that we were going to do tried to do a special, he invited us to do a special journal about this experience in Costa Rica of community archaeomythology, that they had to come here to see for themselves what I was talking about, because they can speak about it in a much better way than I could. And I know that it was true, and I'm going to give you just 3 clues. Maraya Jimenez is a young 22-year-old Afro and indigenous woman who substituted me as coordinator of the diving center, began in 2013, have discovered her own roots by asking the same questions about the ship to her family and to history and to culture about herself. And she said, when she presented the experience of the ambassadors of the sea, that archaeomythology for her and for the youth of the diving center was the way in which they were able to talk about their experience in an integral, holistic way that integrates not only all the disciplines, but the mythology, the stories, the experience, the vibration, and the stories that they were able to pick up from their grandparents. So she ended up by saying to Joan, so our definition is that archaeomythology is what we do every day when we do diving, to find the identity of the ship, where we're also finding ours. And it is what we do every day brought to science. So it was really important to listen to that, because it affirmed that everybody has the definition, but it's not off kilt. The second one is the Bribri, Afro, and Quebecer women who said that when I said to them that it was going to be about archaeomythology, they got really excited. So I said to Joan, they also have a definition. Everybody has a definition. And I'm open source, so I'm glad about all the definitions. And that's what we have to share. And indeed, when they came to the seminar, they all said that it was the first time they have been to many conferences and many seminars all over the country. But it was the first time that they were convened to one that had to do about their roots and about their own stories, and legitimized by a safe space. So that was also very important. And I want to talk about the safe space, because the 3 moving forces that were behind our local thrust to organize this dialogue between archaeomythology, citizen science, and all of the stakeholders that were there, is that it had to do with ambassadors of the sea needing to legitimize a work that is about to prove that those are the slave ships. And you know what is coming after that, you know, all kinds of pressure, all kinds of wanting to own the project, all kinds of ways that people can appropriate it, and all kinds of ways, as the youth said, that we are going to be taken out of the picture because nobody believes that we have done it. But the other movings, and so archaeomythology gives them a scientific legitimacy that doesn't take anything away from their own epistemology, because citizen science is about learning the scientific method, but integrating it with the ancestral knowledge that the kids bring to the process. The second one is archaeomythology itself, because it brings all of those perspectives. And the third moving force of this seminar was the gift network dimension of the way in which we did it and the reason why we did it. Because this kind of seminar, local and international, a safe space for women to be able to talk, free of any pressure like the ones that are pending on the region to gentrify it, could happen because everybody brought the gifts that they had to be able to do it financially. I will talk about that in the next time. But also because with Joan, we have been having a reflection about how the gift economy has to be factored in as one of the main characteristics of the recovery of our ancestral ways of organizing societies, because it had to be that way. There's no traces of coins, of money, of exchange in the original communities. I haven't researched it, but I have read, and Maria left us that legacy with others who have studied others. But there was a way in which the natural way of nature in its gift economy to us was also the way that people must have lived originally. So I will leave you with that. We will pick it up in 2 weeks. And then in the fall, we will have a special session where you will be able to come back and listen to the youth who are the leaders of this project right now in Costa Rica. So the Q&A, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, Joan, Vicki, and Sorrel. It was really exciting to hear your experiences of your time together in Costa Rica, your offerings, and truly the gifts that happened at your events. And I just want to say out loud again, I know Maria has said it and Vicki has said it, that if you're not aware that Joan, Maria, and Vicki are part of the International Feminists for a Gift Economy Network that really put mothers at the center and the orientation. As Genevieve always shares with us, when you shift the paradigm to the maternal gift economy, these events that Maria organized are held in that context. And it's very subtle. So you're not going to always hear the gift economy language and theory, but you'll hear the real live livingness of how each person lives it out. And there's the underlying connection of the maternal gift economy that actually creates the relationship of all the works. These specialized women, their special experiences, their expertise come together in this paradigm of unilateral giving and receiving, which was at the heart of the events that Maria organized. So with that, I want to open it up. And I think that we probably have time for 1 or 2 questions. And I think Liliana has a question.
Yes, I have a question for Vicki. What did the indigenous women think about the motherpiece Toro?
They seemed receptive. I gave the decks to as many of them as expressed interest. So we didn't do you know, the mother piece work that I did was actually with the feminist group on the first workshop we did. It wasn't at the seminar. So it was pretty peripheral to what we were doing at the seminar. But they seemed to like it, you know, when they looked through the pictures and so on. And in a deeper way, you know, there was resonance in terms of the matriarchal story and the matrilineal and the menstruation.
Thanks, Vicki. And for Sorrel and Joan, I wondered if you could just say a little bit about your work and do you feel it was understood and received by these Indigenous women? And Joan?
Well, I can go first if she's slow on the draw. I mean, I felt like they were giving to me, not the other way around. But that very simple language of art and that very simple but very profound sort of exchange that happened between us, it didn't need a lot of words. We were able to communicate a bit verbally and also through translator, and I can understand a little bit of Spanish as well. But it's very beautiful to see how somebody's face lights up when you give them something that you've made for them in that respect. And yeah, they seem very delighted, especially with the portraits of the children. I think that's what made the most impact.
Thanks so much, Sorrel. Maria, do you want to go first before Joan? Yeah,
I just have to say something about what Sorrel said about the impact, because when Lucy, the 4-year-old child, I asked her if she wanted to present her portrait to the whole plenary, and she said, and she was thrilled to bring her portrait and show it to everybody. But she said, I have to come with my artist, and her artist was doing another portrait. So I said to her, Lucy, you can come by yourself, and then in another time, you will all get them together. But to me, it was really what Sorrel is saying about the interaction, what I understood when I heard Sorrel, that this kid wanted to come with the artist of the portrait, not only herself show it. And that showed to me the deepest connection.
Thanks, Maria.
Well, in response to the question, too, I would say, as Sorrel did, that I feel like I was receiving more than what I couldn't tell, you know, what anyone was receiving from me. Plus, I spent most of my time behind the camera, so I had a little kind of almost like a screen in front of me. But I felt like there was a silent transmission and appreciation that was going on all the time, and that for me was extremely fulfilling, and I think they could tell that I appreciated them very, very much. So yeah, it was mutual.
Thanks, Joan. Maria, yes.
So what I have to say about that also is that I don't have a chance now because I want to get more questions, but I will present 2 Saturdays from now what the outcome of the conference has been in all of the activities that are already happening, like encuentros of Quebecer women in the Pacific that are inviting us to go and all of that, and all 3 of them. Joan is being invited to come back to do conferences at the university and to go up to the highlands of Talamanca to be able to do kind of a repetition of the seminar so that more Indigenous women want to come. Sorrel is coming also, and there's a festival of art that some of the feminists are organizing, and she might do more portraits and present them. And Vicki she doesn't even know it because I just found out 2 nights ago that the feminist movement wants to bring her next year to do another conference about the feminist tarot. So they have all been invited back to what everybody calls dialogues and interactions, and that's really the proof of the pie. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So I do have a question for Jen, because Jen, we are all part of your network. And as you hear and listen to this, how does that stimulate you in terms of your own thinking about the maternal gift economy, or how the theory is applied in that way? And I see you smiling big, so I know that you're happy.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Letecia. It is a way that a gift has been given both to the people in the indigenous community there and to the people who went there, to the Europeans who went and were able to give and receive the attention and the gifts of the others. So in a way, it's forming a community, and you form a community through giving and receiving. And I think this is the beginning of a community that really needs to happen, needs to happen everywhere, really. And women are the ones who can do it, because we are still, even though we're immersed in patriarchal capitalism, we still have that part of us that is recognizes that we're based in giving and receiving. Also because we have not given it up, because, well, many of us we've all been expected to maybe become mothers when we're grown, and so we don't give up that model like most men do. And so it's our duty and our honor to be able to do such meetings. And I take off my hat to you all for having done it.
Thank you, Jen. I think that it's so wonderful, because Maria just demonstrated in her last speaking that the seeds that were dropped in at this one conference are growing and propagating in the fertile ground of the maternal gift economy, and the way that those events will unfold. So it's very, very exciting, and sometimes really hard to articulate that underneath all of the interaction is the maternal gift economy, or it wouldn't happen. That's what we need to recognize. It wouldn't happen in this way because people would be very concerned about the details. Where are we going to get the money? Is this appropriate or not? These are the underlying values of what these relationships now cultivated. And I think the thing that most strikes me about the sharings that Maria, Joan, Vicki, and Sorrel offered us today is this understanding that, live in person, the actual living traditions, these are living traditions of maternal roots that we have experienced, and that all over the world, the hope is that the maternal gift economy lives in these indigenous communities. And what the West has to offer when the two minds come together is language and understanding to connect larger networks of these values. It's much larger than we actually even understand. And when we can, come together in this way, it multiplies the numbers of people who have the understanding, and that's what will create the movement. So yes, Maria. Last words from Maria and Sorrel and Vicki and Joan, and then Jen, if you'd like to have last words before we close. So Maria. Oops, you just muted yourself, my friend.
Sorry. I just want to end up by saying that one of the questions that we posed in one of our Wednesday maternal gift economy meetings was whether we could do, and that one of the questions that we posed in one of our Wednesday maternal gift economy meetings was whether we could do another seminar like this one, because this one was organized recently, that if we could think that we could organize another one in the near future for the gift economy or people interested in it. And in thinking about it, we're going to talk the next session 2 Saturdays from now about the proposal that we have for the gift economy network that wouldn't be about organizing another seminar here, because it might not be the best way to be able to do it for many people who might want to come, but it would take the form of an interactive residency of women and men who want to come to also share this experience with the Briri, the Quebecer, the Nobe, the Afro women, and all of us, and also visit the museum and come and live in this very special community. That it would take a different form of kinds of visits that we can organize that are of interactivity, like the seminar and the conference were. And I want to thank Sorrel, I want to thank Vicki, and I want to thank Joan, because we did a lot of work to do this and do it together. And it is showing that it is, yes, indeed, a way in which we can move globally beyond understanding the present day context by looking at our ancestry to face the present day challenges, which we will also talk about next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Joan, would you like to offer some last words? Or
I'm just moved to say that there was this splendid young woman, Tulu, who's from Nicaragua. No, she's from Nigeria. And Nigeria, yes. And she said she had to come to Costa Rica to find her culture, which was, to me, there was something preserved of great value there. And she was saying that in Nigeria, the colonists had come, I mean, the colonialists had come and taken most of the artifacts away and put them in European museums. And there was only one small museum in her country that had anything left at all. And you know, what she's looking for doesn't exist there now, but she can find it here because of the depth of the spiritual connection, the depth of the ancestral knowledge that is still celebrated here, and I think is going to be more celebrated as time goes on. So, yeah.
Thanks, Joan. Vicki, would you like to offer some last words?
I guess the only thing I would add is to speak again about the museum. It was such a phenomenal experience to be in that museum. I love museums just about more than anything, and I go to any archaeological museum anywhere that I visit. And, you know, this was 5 floors of vases and figurines that were not just female oriented, but they were what my friend Miriam Robbins Dexter would call display figures, sacred display figures. They're vulvas in all different kinds of artistic expressions. I was just blown away. And Guadalupe shared with me some archival catalog material from the museum, which I haven't even tapped yet. I intend to do something, I don't know what, but I was so inspired to see so much in such a small country and such a small museum. The number of female the amount of female iconography in that museum just blew me away, and that is their ancestral background. You know, that's the foundation of the kind of indigenous women that we're talking about, their wisdom and their connection to the earth. It's still there somehow. I don't know how it is that they didn't get all that stuff stolen and taken, to the British Museum or somewhere, but they didn't. And there it all is. And it's just a concentrated education in matriarchy.
Thanks, Vicki. Sorrel, last words you'd like to leave us with?
Okay. For me, I felt like the underlying theme of this conference was finding our common humanity and learning to communicate with each other from that point. And I feel like it was wildly successful and that we did it in many different ways. And so I want to thank Maria for your ingenuity and your genius and your incredible coordination skills for having made that happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Sorrel. Jen, any last words for us?
Well, yes, I think, we as women of the global north can really learn from the women of the global south and from the indigenous women in order to empower our own gift ways, recognize them and bring them forth in order to change the system that we're living in, which is a biopathic system and not a system of gifts. And so we need to absolutely learn, and this is a very important connection with the women, the indigenous women there in Costa Rica. So thank you, Maria, and thank you everyone for having made this happen.
Wonderful. Yes, I want to thank Maria, Joan, Vicki, and Sorrel for really joining us today and sharing your experience. Over and over again, I think it's so important to really identify and really check your own reality, how we're speaking about a paradigm or how we're speaking about our work. Because Sorrel and Vicki and Joan all mentioned the livingness of the theory that old Europe is just reaching back 5,000 years to recover is alive in the indigenous communities. It doesn't have the same language because it's a different context, but it's the same human values. And I think it's so important because when we say that the maternal values or these values don't exist, the erasure of indigenous women is happening. When you say we have to recover these things, you are not acknowledging that there are millions, perhaps billions of indigenous women who struggle every day to stand tall in their maternal, matriarchal, and gift values. So I just want to thank you all for helping to raise the awareness of that because it's so brilliant. I want to thank our team. We didn't have a lot of time for questions, but Liliana and Judith stand by to make sure that those happen. And I wrote in the comment section that questions that did not get answered and comments that were specifically for our presenters will be sent to them, along with a list of all of the registrations. I want to thank Diane, who forever just really supports us technically and just makes sure that everything runs smoothly. If you'd like to be notified of our upcoming salons and events, please do write to us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com. All of the recordings of our salons and special events you can watch, including this recording, will be at maternalgifteconomymovement.org. And Maria has already invited you. I just want to remind you that in 2 weeks, part 2, highlighting the rest of this event and more of this event, along with 2 Indigenous women that they're bringing with them to speak in their own voices and share their experience and their understanding of what happened, and the cultural exchange that went on, is taking place July the 27th, same time. And again, in the fall, we take a break for about 6 weeks. We'll come back in the fall, and in the fall, we'll have a special event where the youth, 2 of the youth will be invited along with Maria and perhaps Joan, if she has time to join, so that we can hear more about the citizen science that happens and their consciousness that was raised at a much younger age about the maternal gift economy, matriarchy, and all of the things that we share as strong feminists. So thank you, everyone who is here today, who's watching the recording, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Everyone, we need to stop the genocide now.
Right.
Peace. Take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.